you've been talking about this recently, and I think where I keep getting confused, and what sometimes happens is that I'll take this, there's nobody concept, and then do two things. One, I become passive, and then probably do behaviors that aren't necessarily good for me, knowing that I'm passive, pretending nobody's home.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, I am noticing I have no control.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is, how do the two work? I mean, I'm just really perplexed.
Yeah. It's.
Oops, sorry, I just got a text. Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. You see, non-duality is an intellectual. It's not. So unfortunately, when I speak about it, when somebody's listening, they think what I'm speaking about is the ideas, and really what's happening is there's a pointing to this silence, or what's the speaking is screaming silence. It's not about what's actually being said or spoken about. But it sounds like the concepts have meaning, but nothing actually has meaning. And it doesn't actually mean anything. There's nobody there, or there is nobody, or life's not happening to anyone, or that you don't have any choice. But what happens is the person hears that, and it takes it into itself, and it tries to become somebody with no choice, somebody with nobody there. And this will create a deadness, actually. It might actually relax some of the emotional roller coasters, but it will become a deadness.
Yeah.
What's actually meant to happen, and this is a phase, like lots of people go through this, Marianne, but what's meant to happen is there's meant to be a collapsing back into what's happening, so everything comes alive again. But that's not an intellectual thing. It's where this stillness comes forward and the person sort of goes into the background. The person is no longer the experiencer, it is an experience. Where when the separate person's there, it's all about you and you're the centre of the world. So it's like a shift, an energetic shift from being that contracted energy to boundlessness. And really, if you feel like you are someone, it's useless repeating what I say non-duality wise. Just listen to what I say, and what should happen is that when you're listening, there is a remembering of this stillness, but it's not an intellectual thing. But when you feel like you are there, like is I would put the attention on the bodily sensations, on the emotions, on the feelings, rather than what you think, and keep moving it down to that rather than the intellect. And then also keep remembering that it's all stillness, it's all made of stillness, but all the other concepts I have, to live by them will make things dead. But when you feel like you are someone, that someone always wants to do something. So it takes these concepts, because I don't really give any practices, it takes these concepts and then tries to wear them as a badge. It doesn't even know it's doing it, it just does it.
And it seems to happen, I mean, it doesn't happen all the time. And like, in fact, lately I've been listening to you a lot while like painting or whatever. So I'm kind of, you're in the background, and it's talking to something else apparently.
Yeah.
And then but then somehow, and then that carries forth, and then somehow then my person or whatever gets reintegrated and then takes whatever you've said and tries to I think to live by it.
Yeah, no, and it can't help it in a way, but I think that's beautiful what you describe with the painting, because it does do that. You're painting, and it's not like you're focused too much on intellectually understanding me, but that you're allowing the words to represent that silence. It is really beautiful, that part. But that, in a way, that's all the person can do. The person's going to try to always do something with whatever it comes in contact with. So it tries to wear non-duality, and the reason that it's doing that is to try and get to a better future. But this is never going to work, this game. All you ever have is this present moment. All you ever have is this. and it's never going to work getting to the future. So when you notice that happening, just move the attention to what's being felt and notice that in the body there's a seeking energy that wants to go somewhere else, and in the recognition of that it stops playing unconsciously. And more than likely it slows that game down. It can't awake you because awakeness is you. It is it. But it's going to slow down the seeking in the person. It's going to relax the person more.
So in that respect, okay, that brings up another thing, because I've noticed that if I'm tired or if I'm frustrated or stressed out or whatever, for whatever reason, whatever is going on in my life, I notice what you've been talking about, that's when we get more entrenched in our thinking mind or whatever. But then I take the concepts and get confused and say, well, when I try to put my attention to my body, or I try to not act a certain way, or there is that seeker. So is that, I know it's all part of it, but at the same time, is there something that this person can do to soften, or is that just...
Well, when that person's there, it's always going to try to be making things better in time. So it's always going to try to make things better. Now, in that personal world, in the separate self world, that separate person can't get to enlightenment. It's never going to happen. The separate person is a movement in time, and what's being talked about is timelessness. So that's impossible that the person can wake itself up. But what the person can do is there can be a bringing to awareness its dynamics. And in its dynamic, in the recognition of its dynamics, those dynamics will dissolve. It can't do the final killing of itself, but it can, because when the separate self starts, that bundle of energy, it then goes through 30 years of believing that game and developing very neurotic patterns, and that's when it begins to suffer. It puts too much emphasis on thinking, and it keeps acting out old patterns. So by bringing attention to what's happening behind what you want and what you're telling yourself intellectually, like there is nobody, and being aware that there's a discomfort and you aren't feeling comfortable, those games will stop acting out. So therefore, the separate self will stop being so neurotic, if you know what I mean. Now, some speakers will say that when it becomes less neurotic or less dense, there's more chance of hearing non-duality. And some say that it doesn't matter either way. Basically, nobody knows. But it will, by being aware of those dynamics, those seeking dynamics, it will relax the seeking. It's not always comfortable doing it because you're used to acting out your games. So you're used to going and eating if you feel uncomfortable or doing certain things. So putting the attention there and realizing the discomfort that's in the body is sometimes a bit uncomfortable. It feels like coming off of drugs or something. Like you're used to taking drugs in order to relax yourself, and now there's not so much of that. But then it's actually really freeing, because when that passes and when the separate person stops being afraid of itself, it relaxes into itself so much more. And this is way more beneficial than you repeating to yourself, there is no one, it's all beingness. But carry on listening to non-duality, because that's beautiful, because these talks are all about being sucked back into the moment. And I think that's what happens here, is that when I speak, there's a resonance that's kind of bringing this, what is, back to life.
Yes.
But if you're telling yourself there is nobody, and it's all these kind of non-dual stories, this is going to hurt you.
Okay.
Because you're going to take on a new identity, and it will most probably lead to depression as well, and a deadness.
Right.
The best thing to do is to keep bringing the attention back to what's happening in the body. The intellect has never been the king. The intellect has been a poor man's slave, work instrument, or whatever it is. But we've put so much attention on the intellect. It's never been the master and the fantastic thing we thought it was. It's certainly never talked about you, Marianne, or anybody else for that matter.
Yeah, and okay, so last time I spoke with you, it was a couple months ago, you said something, and then again I conceptualized it. You talked about the apes or monkeys or whatever, and how everybody has roles and everybody does things and whatnot. And I love that.
Yeah.
And again, that worked for a while because it was that softening into an isness, like, well, this is how I am, this is how they are, and we'll just move along. But then through that, I think what I saw was the lack of, I mean, how really the Marianne has no control over what goes on.
Yeah, no, she doesn't.
So yeah. I mean, and there's evidence over and over and over again where that's true.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, she grabs onto that and again takes this concept and does that exact same thing, like becomes the passive, becomes depressed, or becomes, again, conceptualizes it.
Yeah.
So when you say go to the body and
yeah,
feel the
definitely.
body,
This is a much better guide, particularly as a woman. I'm sorry to be so sexist, but like you're having so many feelings and emotions, and if you stay in the intellect, then you're just acting them out. You know what I mean? Like there's so many feelings. It's like a wealth in there. But doesn't need to be a really strict practice. But when you notice that the mind's circling, just take a moment to sit there and feel what's happening in the body and how you want to keep working it out and finding a solution. And you want to keep relying on the thought patterns, and it never works. And it will feel a bit uncomfortable, but you'll begin to fall in love with the sensations of the body, and they won't be so scary. You won't be so scared of feeling uncomfortable.
And I have control to be able to do that.
No, you don't actually, but it seems like you do. But if I also said to you now, can you stand up? More than likely the body will stand up. It's the way that it works. It's like an interactive robot.
Okay.
But you have no. But next time it's happening, when the thoughts are circling, what will happen? More than likely is a thought will pop up and say, "Oh, but what about the body?" And it's nothing to do with Marianne. That doesn't equal Marianne. All of it's an instantaneous appearance that's got the pattern of Marianne, but there is no solid Marianne. There is beingness looking through a body, and it's
and then a thought shows up, and so it'll show up and say, think of the, feel the body or feel the hands or whatever, and I may be able to, and then I'll jump back to thinking.
Yeah. And
then I may be able to again, right?
And you'll feel like you're doing it with your free will, but there is no free will. There's the appearance of free will. There's appearance of choice that comes from nowhere, comes from a total mystery. And then this energy sucks it in and says, that's me. That's who I am.
And then at the same time, the passive person just takes exactly what you just said and acts like it has no control in the depressed, dead way.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's a matter of saying that's not true as well.
No, and and the reason that is totally to support the story of depression and victimhood. And this is why I've had to begin to go the opposite to what I said, because I realized that people were taking it on as a way to maintain depression. And way to maintain downness, because it appears as if you have free will, but you don't have free will. But if I say to the robot, feel the emotions rather than the story of the emotions, more than likely it will do it.
Yes.
But it's not you. That's not you. But what the brain hears when it interprets what I say is, she says there's nothing I can do. There's nobody here. It's pointless. I just have to lay here and feel bad, and my life is meaningless. And that's completely not what I'm saying, but that's the way the mind takes it on. When it's in a particular mood, when it's feeling positive, then not having free will or choice is a wonderful thing. But when it's in a particular mood, it uses it. Instead of being depressed about your partner, it's depressed about non-duality.
Yes, because in a positive mood, it feels like, wow, this is so cool.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, let's just go on for the ride.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
it's stressed or tired or, something, I don't know, an obstacle comes up. Then it becomes, the depressed, like, oh, and I can't do anything about it, and whatever that.
And this is the most important time for the attention to move to the emotions. And see, there is a big contraction there, and you desperately want to get out of it, and that's what's creating the discomfort. So when this comes to light, it really will begin to stop that neurotic functioning, that uncomfortable functioning of the person. But it can't collapse that separate energy. That happens or it doesn't. You can't undo yourself. That's an impossibility, because who would be doing that? There would be somebody there undoing it. But, you're listening to non-duality, and it's not like you're listening to how to sew or how to do ballet or how to cook. It's like non-duality is presenting itself, so it's more than likely that body's awakening. Otherwise there wouldn't be a resonance with it.
Right. And there is a part that it does resonate with, and it does make sense too.
Yeah.
So in the circumstance, that, let's get that scenario again, where where the circumstance is making me uncomfortable, or whatever, there's discomfort, and the reaction is to get rid of it.
Yeah.
You're just saying, just keep sitting with what's going on.
Notice what's happening. Although there isn't you there to notice, but that functioning more than likely will happen. The noticing of what's happening in the body, rather than just the top layer story of there is nobody.
Okay.
You shouldn't feel like this because there is nobody. Why are you feeling like this? You've not, whatever it's telling on the surface level, these are just simply byproducts of that discomfort. And that discomfort, as soon as there's the energetic separation, there is two feelings of lack and fear. And so just there's a recognition of them. And if it's really intense, speak it out. If you're really angry with your husband or, with life or something, speak out that dislike. But knowingly do it, not as in you're just acting it out, but you're sitting there and you're like, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this. Just because it's better than just circling in the stories on the top level. So there's many different things that you can do just to be with that feeling, rather than trying to imagine something in the future or kick yourself even more with a story.
Negative behavior.
Yeah. Or acting out on someone.
Okay.
Although really it's all perfect, and you're not acting separately, but this information changes things, but it's not changing someone, because there is no solid someone.
But it's okay, because I think the other thing that I do also, it's either, and that I guess it's a condition thing as well, it's that whole like you said, speak it out.
Yeah.
Probably keep it in instead.
Oh no, I don't mean speak it out to someone.
Oh, don't speak it out.
No, I just mean speak it out to yourself in the bathroom or in your bedroom. No, whenever I say that, I always forget to say not to someone. Don't act it out with someone. It's always better not to act it out, but the urge comes up and you're like, "Rah!"
Well, because I think one day last week I did the "rah." And I don't know, because I guess whatever, and which totally shocked the Marianne character too.
Yeah.
Because the Marianne character doesn't act like that.
Yeah.
So,
but sometimes it has to do that if it does it. But it's good just to sit by yourself, and then there can be a recognition of what's going on, rather than just staying in the top story of I hate you, or there can be a recognition that it always comes from the separation, the energetic separation, and the two primary emotions, lack, I am not enough, and fear, this is scaring me. I'm scared of my emotions and feelings.
And both of those make total sense.
Yeah.
And find those, they do. That's what I end up finding. But most of the time, I'm giving feedback. Most of the time, I feel like it's just, how do I say it? It's easier to go do something and deny it.
Yeah. Yeah, and just take a minute or two to recognize it and then go and do it. It's okay to feed it, but just recognize that that's happening. Just a moment, just 2 or 3 minutes or 5 minutes, and just sit there and be like, oh.
Okay.
And then it's okay to get up and do it. Like, of course you don't want to be feeling uncomfortable, but the recognition for the balancing out of that sense of self is really important. The recognition of its patterns. But this isn't about getting to an enlightenment. Like forget that, getting to enlightenment. That's happening. That's a useless idea, getting to enlightenment. It doesn't have any purpose or relevance. It's a way to make you actually feel low about yourself, that there's enlightenment out there that you've got to achieve. So it's just bringing to light the dynamics of the person, and in that it begins to dissolve the intensity of them. And then the non-duality, the waking up part, is happening beyond you. But it's just going to make your life worse if you as a person identify with non-duality.
Okay.
That's if you identify, and there's a difference between listening to it, but I mean taking it home and trying to be not a person when you are a person is just going to drive you around the bend. It's going to do your head in. You're because it's impossible. If you feel like a person with free will, then that's what you feel like, and that's what's got to happen. And the best thing that person can do, well, it feels separate, is the recognition of its dynamics, that all of it's happening in beingness, none of it's personal, and just recognizing that it's always trying to fulfill itself.
And let that be okay.
Yeah, it's totally okay. It's totally okay. And then through the understanding of the Marianne character and Marinette, then there will be a greater understanding of the other ones and a greater compassion for the other ones. And then at the same time, they're listening to non-duality and hearing that, because really what the speaker's doing is, it doesn't really matter that much what they say, although there's a preference. Lisa, I have a preference for some speakers over others, but intellectually it's not that important. Really what's happening in these talks is they're speaking in silence, and you know that when you're painting, you know what I mean, when there's an absolute loss in the moment, and you can hear my voice and you're painting, but you're not really listening. You're listening but not listening.
Right. Exactly. And I leave here and I go to try to tell my friend what you said, and I can't. No. Because there's a knowing but a not knowing. So yeah. I understand that totally. Yeah. So it's only when I think I must grab on to something you do say and then try to...
But that's okay, but just recognize that is coming from you wanting to be something. Just the recognition, what's happening there, that it's trying to be something in time, and it's trying to feel better than it currently feels. Like it's just trying to add something, and it doesn't even need to stop. If it feels the urge to go and do that, that's what it's got to do. But just the awareness of what it's doing breaks those unconscious patterns, because the reason why these patterns carry on acting out, so say if you're in a very passive-aggressive relationship with someone, the reason it carries on acting out is because neither of the characters have a consciousness of it. When they have a consciousness, they're not going to keep doing things to hurt their partner, although they might, but they'll do it with a knowingness, and with that knowingness it's more than likely to break it, or to change it in some way, or to have more compassion to the other person and, be able to apologize about it. But it's nobody doing it, it's just the way these instruments work. When you put in information to this body, so if you put information into this body, that if I keep putting my hand in the fire, it will hurt, then there's more than likely that will stop. Just like the dynamics of the person. If it's conscious, but it's not somebody's consciousness, but if they come to light, because normally they're not conscious, they're hidden, they're acting out, but there's no awareness of them. When they come to the light, it breaks that a bit. It breaks the patterns of it. And it really make the person's life a lot easier and a lot better. And then non-duality will be boof, boof in those moments when it's ready to be boof and show itself.
And that's up to it, not to me. And I get that. You've said that so beautifully. Yeah. And then the rest, I just take a pause and do the body thing, or do the what's going on emotionally. Yeah. And see.
Yeah, and you don't need to work too much. It doesn't need to come too intellectual. It will, just more of the sensations of the body, and then a little bit of thinking about the behavior, but not too much. It doesn't need to be too much thinking about yourself.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Marianne. I didn't get to see your face, so I recognise your voice from speaking to you before, but I can't remember what you looked like.
Nope. I'm glad. Well, I appreciate everything, and I'll be listening.
Oh, with pleasure. Lots of love to you.
Love to you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
And do my seal clap.